qui tam lawsuit is allowed by Oklahoma statute, and it allows citizens, just like we are in this room, to have a course of recovery. But there are a number of steps that have to be taken before you can pursue it as a qui tam action. First of all, you have to make a demand on the agency to collect any money unlawfully paid to a third party. You must give that agency the opportunity to take back the money improperly paid over. If it fails to do so, and you have at least 100 citizens who want to go forward with the qui tam suit, you then prosecute the action on behalf of the state, acting in essence as a private attorney general. We sent out the call, as most of you know, asking for persons who wanted to be part of this qui tam action. The response was overwhelmingly positive. We more than exceeded our 100 people, and by the way, if you're successful, there are attorney fees and things that have to be paid by the agency that violates the law, and you get to participate in that financial recovery. Qui tam actions are difficult, but we are making a demand on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to go after the money that they've paid over. For some of you probably don't know this, but in January and February of this year, over $69 million in contracts were let to engineering firms. Those proceeds, $69 million plus dollars, is a fair piece of change in anyone's book. The way the law is written, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority basically does not have to solicit competitive bids. Can you imagine that? Is there anyone that's a contractor in this room? Well, can you imagine just naming your price and not ever having to compete for the work? That's essentially, we've given the OTA an open checkbook to go out and to contract with these engineering firms. 12 engineering firms received not to exceed $5 million each. One of those 12 not only got that $5 million, it got another $4.96 million and another $2 million. So when you add those numbers up, that's a lot of pre-engineering work. I saw a piece that I read late this evening. It told me that, well, they thought that was a real bargain because they could put the work out there and get this work done. Once again, hopefully we get it all done before we are able to react. And so that's where we are with the qui tam action. We are not quite ready to go forward with it. There are a number of steps that have to be taken, but we've taken step one because we're serious about recouping any proceeds that have been wrongfully paid over to third parties. It's another arrow in our quiver, and we want to be sure that we can essentially utilize every weapon that we have in a lawful manner to stop this land grab insanity. And I call it insanity because it came about in such a manner that no one in this room was to be made knowledgeable about what they were doing until it was too late to protest. At least that was the game plan. And I'll just add, but then I'll turn it back over to you, Doshar, that we found out that the governor was going to roll out the Access Oklahoma plan on February 22. We found that out as part of our discovery. He didn't tell the public that he was going to do that, nor did the agenda tell the public that that was what was going to happen. As a matter of fact, no one even knew that Governor Stitt, who was an ex officio member of the OT, was going to even be at the meeting of February 22. He appeared under this generic item of director's report. So I would ask anyone in this room, does director's report clue you that the governor's going to come to this meeting and talk about rolling out a $5 billion 15-year plan? And I say $5 billion because that's just the principal. There's interest to be paid on that $5 billion because bonds come with interest. So any of you that's ever financed a home knows that you don't just pay the principal, you also have to pay the interest in order to retire your mortgage. So if you let out $5 billion, it's probably going to take close to about $8 or $9 billion to pay that money off. So if they call it a $5 billion plan, there's a lot of fluff in that number. And so I think politicians, unfortunately, have a way of fluffing numbers, and that is a classic. Well, I would just simply say that it's a long fight. We've won battles. The war's not over. So we just have to have perseverance and stay with it and pursue every remedy that we can pursue, because we've got a stubborn, well-financed opponent on the other side of this equation. Truly, it is the David versus Goliath group. It's in this affray. So we know that to stay in the fight, we have to have a lot of perseverance. We have to just stay with it on a daily basis, because these people can go out and hire lawyers, consultants, and all these kinds of people using our money to do that. And so again, this is a gigantic organization. A lot of people don't know that the Turnpike Authority owes $2 billion. It has more outstanding debt than any other governmental agency in the state of Oklahoma. And why is that? Because not one turnpike bond has ever been paid off and retired. We have 11 turnpikes right now, and if you take the Gilcrease, and it could be 12.
Right.
So we have all of these turnpikes, and Wall Street says the following: we love you, Oklahoma, but we want collateral security. So if you're going to build a new turnpike with your history of only having 3 or 4 that actually pay for themselves, you must cross-collateralize all new turnpikes with all 11 revenue streams. Bear in mind, turnpikes are revenue bonds. And we basically have 2 kinds of bonds in Oklahoma: revenue bonds and general obligation bonds. That is a fundamental piece of knowledge that unfortunately people on the Turnpike Board did not know. But you should know that when you graduate from high school, quite frankly, because every time you go to the polls, it seems like someone wants to issue bonds, and it's usually school districts. So are you paying those bonds off with general obligation money, or are you paying them off with revenue? Normally, when you get into a school bond, it's general obligation. That means the taxpayers have to come up with the money to retire the bonds. If it's a revenue bond, it means that there is a stream of income that's committed to retire the debt. And in the event of a turnpike, it is the tolls that are paid to utilize those roads. But they have them cross-collateralized. And you ask yourself, well, what happens if we can't pay them? Well, the bondholders can then run your turnpikes. They can take them back. But the more likely scenario is they go whining and whimpering over to the state legislature, and the legislature would then do a bailout using general obligation tax dollars to pay off those bonds. So, quite frankly, there has never been the kind of audit that needs to be performed. I've met twice now with Attorney General-elect Gittner Drummond. He's an outstanding lawyer, and I think he'll be a tremendous breath of fresh air to have in the Capitol. And we're looking forward to him taking a fresh look at this entire issue of bonds and to demand accountability, and I think that we will see an audit forthcoming from our state auditor and inspector, and certainly assisted by our state attorney general. So I think things are looking on the upward spiral for us. So we have to just stay in this fight, persevere, and take it to them on every occasion that we can, because they're not sleeping. And of course, when they're not sleeping, we're not going to sleep. We're going to work harder than they do to get to the end of the road and to have this matter put to bed. Rashard brought up this issue. They buy your property today. Does anyone know that about going out and buying a lot, hiring a contractor or maybe an architect and building the house? If you built it in 2 years, you'd be lucky. So with the history we've had recently, would you want to take today's dollars to build a house that's not going to be completed for 2 years? How do you deal with that problem? That is a major problem.
That is the problem.
So how are you going to deal with that? It's not just, well, I'm going to pay you what it's worth today. Well, that's great. But what about for my replacement cost? How am I going to replace what I have? Because I'm going to go have to locate the land, hire an architect or a designer, hire a general contractor, hope that he can get the materials delivered, because we've had a little shortage now here and there getting materials. And maybe 2 years later, with any luck, I've got my house and I'm back in it. Well, guys my age and gals, I'll tell you right now, you don't go down to the store and buy green bananas, and you don't go to the nursery and get trees that are less than 10 feet tall. So 2 years is a lifetime. I just hope by the grace of God that I'll be around in 2 years to say that we won this war and that we can now all rest a lot easier. Because when I drove into my driveway tonight, it was so clear I could see downtown, I could see the Devon Tower. If they put in what they want to see, I won't ever see the Devon Tower from my land in Noble, Oklahoma again. I'll be confined to some lot probably that has a view of some trees and maybe a lot less land than I've been able to acquire over the years. So it's a major, major issue for most everyone in this room, because for most people, the purchase of your home represents the largest asset that you'll ever own. That equity that you have in your home. So I would say that we're here because we're concerned. We're in this fight together. We know basically what our game plan is, and we are going to stick pretty close to it. And so hopefully at the end of the day, we'll all be happier. And I will say that we're trying to have a little social event sometimes in January, Rashard, where all of you will be invited, and we hope to have a few sandwiches and chips and Cokes and things of that nature, and to once again brief you on the progress and to answer your questions. So we're looking for the place to conduct this particular convocation, but hopefully we'll all stay together, because this project transcends political boundaries. We don't know Democrats or Republicans. We know people that are hurting because of the OTA. So we want to stay together, put the politics aside, and have this unified proposition that we want to stop this and stop it cold if we can. That's our goal, and that's what we're driving towards.
We know I've heard of 2 lawsuits already. One of them is Open Meetings Act. The other one is the bond issuance. Those are hopeful opportunities to stall it, but not stop it. I wondered if you have any insights as to future lawsuits that might be more effective in stopping.
Well, we of course have the key TAM action that we're considering that I addressed earlier in the meeting. And what the initial plan was is hopefully we can win the Open Meeting Acts, put the brakes on this, And hopefully we can get a constitutional amendment or some legislation that will make it much more difficult to build these freeways without citizen input. We want to see the law that would be written in this type of a manner. All persons within 1 mile of the proposed turnpike should have a voice and a vote to determine whether they want the turnpike. And if it passes by a simple majority, you go forward with the turnpike. We don't just vest all that authority for, is this a public use, in the OTA or some board down there that basically is a group of sycophants for 1 or 2 politicians. So we're hopeful we can take it out of their hands and put it back into the hands of we the people. It's not easy, and we know what the challenge is. I headed up, and way back 30 years ago, the 640 drive to stop the income tax and all the taxes from being raised every year the legislature met. I was told we had no chance of passing it. We passed it in spades, and since that date, since 2002, there's never been a vote for a tax over a supermajority of 3/4. So the people can be heard, the people should be heard, and we hope to give the people the opportunity to be heard through our continuous legal actions.
My name's Pam Post.
Hi, Pam.
My question is in regards to the routes and the bonds that Judge Olson today said was going to be heard at the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court rules in our favor that OTA is not able to get these bonds because of the routes being not in the statutes, or because of the all of it having to be in one bond indenture, what is OTA's recourse about going back in and trying to get those routes reinstated?
Good question, Stan.
Well, as you know, that's not the suit that I'm most familiar with, because
Right.
Rob Norman is the attorney for the PIKE group. I'll just say that we're working in tandem with PIKE because we have a common goal, and we certainly want to see them successful. The problem is, quite frankly, they're going to try all these type of remediation actions to go back to the legislature. And here we have a governor that orchestrated this Access Oklahoma plan. And you know, governors can spread out a lot of favors. So there's going to be legislators that are going to be very close to the governor's shirt tails. So the question is, are we going to be able to even get enough votes out of the legislature to do a referendum petition, a referendum vote? If you have an initiative petition, that's expensive. It's time consuming, probably costs well over $1 million to do a successful initiative petition. So if I wanted to please my governor and I'm in the House or the Senate in Oklahoma City, I would vote against anything that would allow the people to have a say. And, you know, I'm afraid that's going to be part of the resistance or the pushback that we'll see from our legislature. But we have some legislators that have been fighting for us really, really well. And I want to take the time to commend Senator Mary Boren. She has been a real champion in this matter, and she's very accessible.
She is.
And she's extraordinarily helpful, and she'll do everything that she can to help us in this cause as we continue to pursue it. And there are other legislators, Mr. Sterling, and we have all these people that are in our corner, but we have a lot of people that are beholden to the governors too. And so, then remember, Governor Stitt wanted to keep this thing a secret until he rolled it out on February the 22nd. And, you know, he's caught us all by surprise. He delivered a real solar plexus blow to to my wife and to me, and just like the rest of you in this room, when you read in the paper that your property is going to be taken for some turnpike. And then we talk about air quality, we talk about water quality, we talk about the increased trash and the noise quality and the nuisance of a turnpike next to you. Can you imagine that? And the fumes that you're going to get off of diesel trucks, oh, I'm sure they're all going to be electric by then, pulling all of the weight that they have to pull, and you know, every 300 miles stop to get a recharge. But I don't think that we're looking at practical solutions necessarily from the gubernatorial office. He's into this fight. I think the governor wants to leave as his legacy the fact that he has increased the infrastructure, the roads and bridges of the state of Oklahoma, despite the fact that we have more toll roads per capita than any other state. We can be number 30 in education, or wherever we are.
47.
47, but you know, in toll roads, we're really up there. And I'm sure that's something we'd all want to wear on our sleeve to be proud of. But that's what we're dealing with, and we're dealing with that political mentality, and so we're not going to get any help out of the governor's office. I think we're going to get some help out of the new attorney general. I think we'll get some help out of the state auditor. And I think there are other people that are in our corner, and we just need to continue to build this coalition. And that's what we're going to try to do. So I want you to understand something too, because you probably don't know how this works. This is the biggest scam since Madoff, and I don't know about this guy they're calling the mini Madoff. But here's what it happens. It's a circular type of a reaction. You have this project. Who are the first people that make all the money? It's these contracting engineering firms and the acquisition right-of-way boys. They make a bunch of money. Like I told you early on, it's $69 million right out of the chute for them. Now the next group that gets in on the gravy train are the local banks that do the interim financing. So do you think they finance for free? No, they charge interest and they make money. Now suppose they get it out of that interim financing stage and it goes to Wall Street. Well, you got to pay bond lawyers and bond consultants to prepare new documents. You take it to Wall Street and they discount the money before they give it back to you in Oklahoma to build your roads. There's money's now back in Oklahoma. You've paid a bunch of fees and charges. We need now permanent engineering work. So the engineers get to work again. Oh, well, now we need road contractors. They've got to get involved and make their money. And then we've got the people that run Caterpillar and Komatsu and all these heavy equipment boys, and they got to make their money. So the circle continues. And now who else is going to get on this gravy train? There's a couple more. And I'm going to tell you who they are. Oh, we took too much land. We got to declare it surplus. So we're now going to sell what we paid 100 cents on for about 40 cents on the dollar. And who's the buyers? The developers. They go in and buy the land at a song. Their Ponzi scheme never fails because all they have to do is issue another bond issue. Madoff and this guy that's down in the Bahamas or wherever he is in jail on this Bitcoin scam, theirs fails because they get to the point where they can't pay all the investors. In this room, we just continue to pay because they're using those same assets to refinance time after time after time. So there's a whole lot of people, but I've now left out the most important group. Who makes money? It's the politicians who get these contributions. Who do they get them from?
Contractors and developers.
So it is a scam deluxe that the public doesn't have any kind of a classic understanding of, and that's why they get away with it. So if we do nothing more than expose this little scheme, then we've done someone a service. And so I hope that we can take that as a lesson to say, you have been yelling about all the clothes, the beautiful clothes the king is wearing, but you know what? The king is butt naked. And so hopefully we can get down to the butt naked part as part of this whole deal to expose this thing for what it really is. So I really appreciate your turnout tonight to seek more information and to become informed, because informed citizens are real dangerous to those folks in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, we are.